They called him Saifullah, the sword of Allah, a name not given at birth but earned in the dust and blood of countless battlefields. It was a name whispered in fear in Persia, spoken with awe in Byzantium. Khalid ibn al-Walid was not just a man, he was a force of nature. His story is not one of simple conquest, but of genius, faith, and a blade never defeated. His legend was written with the clash of steel and thunder of hooves across the desert. Before the title, there was the man Khalid, a warrior of the Quraysh tribe, a master of strategy born in Mecca. He understood the brutal calculus of war, reading the battlefield like a poet reads verse. He could anticipate a charge before the first horn was blown. This was his gift, and his curse. To see the world as a chessboard of life and death, where every move could mean victory or annihilation. He carried this weight under the scorching sun and cold desert stars. Imagine a sky the color of a bruise stretched over endless dunes. The wind whispers secrets, carrying the scent of sand, sweat, and steel, the scent of impending battle. This was Khalid's world's stark contrasts, blinding light, deep shadows. In this crucible, he was forged. He learned to read shifting sands, to find water where there was none, to survive where others perished. The desert was his teacher, shaping him with harsh, unforgiving lessons. His name echoed long before he became the Sword of Allah. Known as a brilliant, ruthless commander, he led from the front, his presence a beacon for his soldiers. They saw the fire in his eyes and found their own courage. But greatness demands sacrifice, a clarity of purpose few possess. Khalid paid that price willingly. He walked into the heart of the storm, not knowing if he would emerge. But he walked with a certainty that shook the foundations of the old world. This is the story of a man who changed history. This is the unsheathing of the Sword of Allah, and the world would never be the same. The Arabian Peninsula, a vast, untamed wilderness of rock and sand. This is where our story truly begins. The desert breeds a certain kind of person, hard, resilient, patient. It does not suffer fools, it demands respect. Khalid's first training ground was this harsh land. He grew up under a sun that could boil water and a sky so full of stars it felt like eternity. He learned the ways of the camel and the horse, tracking enemies across shifting dunes. His father, al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, was a leader of the Quraysh, and from a young age Khalid was groomed for command. He learned the arts of war not in an academy, but in the real world: wrestling, archery, swordsmanship. He was taught not just how to fight, but how to win. A battle, he learned, is won in the mind before the first sword is drawn. He absorbed the tactics of his people hit-and-run raids, feigned retreats. He was a natural, his movements economical, his swordplay deadly. He mastered the physics of a strike, the psychology of a charge. He could feel the ebb and flow of a skirmish, knowing when to attack and when to pull back. This was instinct, a raw, primal talent for organized violence. The desert was more than a backdrop. It was a character in his story. It shaped his body and mind, teaching the value of water, discipline, and resolve. The harshness of the land stripped away all that was unnecessary, leaving only the essential strength, cunning, endurance. These were the qualities that defined Khalid ibn al-Walid. He was a product of his environment, a son of the sands, destined to ride out of the wilderness and change history forever. The world was not ready for what was coming. The desert had forged its greatest sun, and he was about to unleash a storm. Khalid was the desert's answer to the empires of the world, and his legend was just beginning. Genius is a word we use too easily, but for Khalid, it fits. His mind was his greatest weapon, sharper than any blade. He saw the battlefield as a system of moving parts, not chaos. He could analyze terrain, weather, and morale in an instant. While others reacted, Khalid was already planning 3 moves ahead. He played chess while others played checkers. The board was the world. His strategies were unorthodox, dividing forces, daring night marches, feigned retreats. To his enemies, his tactics seemed reckless, even suicidal. But they were the product of meticulous planning and a deep understanding of psychology. He knew the most effective weapon in war is surprise. He shattered enemy confidence, sowed chaos, and broke their will to fight. Picture a tense strategy meeting under a stormy sky. His generals present the facts. Outnumbered, exposed, retreat seems logical. Khalid listens, then points to a spot on the map no one else considered. He outlines a plan so daring his commanders are left speechless. But in his voice, there is only certainty. This was his gift, seeing opportunity where others saw despair. He inspired his men with quiet confidence, not grand speeches. They followed him into impossible situations because he made the impossible possible. As long as Khalid led, they were not just soldiers, they were a finely tuned instrument of war. And he was the master conductor. Before he fought for Islam, Khalid fought against it. At the Battle of Uhud, he commanded the Meccan cavalry. The Muslims had the upper hand, victory seemed certain, but Khalid watched and waited. He saw a fatal mistake. The Muslim archers abandoned their post for spoils. In that moment, he acted. He led his cavalry in a swift, decisive charge, seizing the high ground. From there, he struck the Muslim rear, turning victory into chaos. It was a masterstroke of tactical brilliance. Uhud was a bitter day for the Muslims, but it was the day Khalid's legend was born. He had changed the outcome of the fight with a single, ruthless decision. Even his enemies had to acknowledge his genius. This battle was a glimpse of the mind that would one day bring empires to their knees. The world had seen the spark of something extraordinary, and it would not be the last time. The winds of change swept Arabia. Khalid, once Islam's fiercest opponent, found himself drawn to its message. His conversion was not sudden, but a struggle of the soul. He left Mecca, abandoning everything he knew, and journeyed to Medina. There, he pledged his sword and life to the Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet saw his sincerity and gave him a new title, Saifullah, the sword of Allah. The sword that once defended idols now served the one God. Khalid's purpose was transformed, his genius now guided by faith. The empires of Persia and Byzantium had no idea what was coming. The Battle of Yarmouk, the ultimate test. The Byzantine Empire gathered over 100,000 men to crush the Muslim state. Facing them was a much smaller Arab army. On paper, it was a slaughter waiting to happen. But the Byzantines did not count on Khalid. For 6 days, the armies faced off across the plains. Khalid reorganized his forces, breaking tradition, creating mobile units, placing his best commanders in key positions. When battle erupted, the Byzantines pushed hard. The Muslim center buckled. But Khalid allowed his lines to bend, not break. He used his elite cavalry like a scalpel, plugging gaps, inspiring his men. On the 6th day, under a blinding sandstorm, Khalid launched his masterstroke, a massive flanking maneuver. The Byzantine left wing shattered, panic spread, and the disciplined legions dissolved into chaos. The rout became one of history's most decisive victories. At Yarmouk, Khalid did not just defeat an army, he broke an empire's spirit. The world changed forever. The sword of Allah had struck, and the earth stood still. The old order was finished. A new era had begun. After Yarmouk, Khalid was unstoppable. He turned to Persia, the other superpower. His campaigns were lightning fast, always outnumbered, always victorious. At Walaja, he executed a double envelopment, annihilating a massive Persian army. Cities surrendered at the mere mention of his name. He was a master of psychological warfare, offering enemies 3 choices: accept Islam, pay the tax, or face the sword. His reputation alone broke enemy morale. The conquest of Syria followed. City after city fell. His soldiers believed they were invincible, following him with unwavering loyalty. The storm of steel that rose from Arabia swept over the empires. Nothing could stop it. 100 battles, no defeats. Alexander, Caesar, Genghis Khan, all tasted defeat. Not Khalid. His career was a perfect chain of victories, the result of preparation, innovation, and personal courage. He led from the front, sharing every risk with his men. This forged a loyalty that could not be broken. Yet at his peak, he was relieved of command by Caliph Umar, who feared Khalid's legend might overshadow faith. Khalid accepted the decision with humility. I fight not for Umar, but for the Lord of Umar. He continued to serve with the same brilliance as a subordinate. This act of loyalty was perhaps his greatest victory. He proved he was more than a general, he was a true believer. His faith was greater than his fame. The sword of Allah was sheathed, but his legend endured. He showed that greatness is measured not just by victory, but by character. Khalid's story is one of faith, humility, and unmatched genius, and it will never be forgotten. Khalid ibn al-Walid died not on the battlefield, but in his bed, his body covered in scars. He wept, not from pain, but from being denied a martyr's death. His legacy is not just his undefeated record, but his military genius still studied today. He showed how a smaller, motivated force could topple empires. Beyond the battlefield, his faith and humility defined him. He proved his ultimate allegiance was to God, not glory. The title Saifullah, the Sword of Allah, echoes through history. It represents the idea that faith, genius, and will can reshape the world. Khalid's sword may rest, but his legend remains as sharp as ever. The world will never forget the name of the Sword of Allah.